this second section, we've seen two examples of how social movements refers to and mobilize the idea of the human right to water and sanitation in their political struggles. Here, the approach is quintessentially political. The promotion of the human right to water and sanitation is clearly linked to the critique of specific political and economic models, and to the critique of such as neoliberalism, and to the critique of specific policies such as privatization of water services and all the policies promoting a greater role for the market and for private operators in water management. Of course, we've seen also from the two different examples that social movement, water movements are heterogeneous. There's not just one single way of mobilizing the human right to water in social struggles, but there is a plurality of adoption, of understanding of this right. Academic and activists have also been debating about the relevance and the pertinence of referring to the human right to water when opposing the privatization of water services. Some of them have been arguing that from a legal perspective and from an institutional perspective, the human right to water and sanitation could be seen rather is coherent also with, or at least does not officially and explicitly forbid policies of the privatization of water services, while others argue that the human right to water remain a strong and effective political tool to oppose water privatization. I think also as a consequence of this, often the human right to water and sanitation within social struggle is used together with other notions, is combined with other ideas such as water as a common or as a common good, or water as a public service, and related concepts such as the remunicipalization of water services. Within this framework, the government and public state institutions are considered the main duty bearer, those in charge who have a duty to fulfill and to promote the human right to water and sanitation. And in fact, through the reference of the human right to water, citizens also advocate for a reassumption of responsibility by public authorities, since they consider that too much has been delegated to the market or to the private sectors. At the same time, the right holders do not remain passive in this context. Right holders here clearly identified as the citizens, and those citizens are actively and collectively engaged to promote the human right to water and sanitation. And I think this is also a sharp contrast with the idea of individual action that was presented in the first section when discussing what kind of actions people should take to implement the SDGs and the human right to water. In this context, among the main solutions identified to promote the human right to water, definitely there is participation. So again, we are in the realm of politics, and so participation both to the decision-making process and to the management of water resources are identified as among the main solutions for the fulfillment of the human right to water and sanitation. And along the same line, equity is understood firstly and foremost as a moral and political claim. So equity, you have seen it in the video, is linked to power relations, to political and to economic interests at different scales. For instance, there is the international scale was mentioned, so international solidarity, North-South relations. Then there is the national scale with the link, sometimes the collusions between state authorities and private operators of water services. And then also there is a local level where the right is claimed. And for instance, we have could be difference between different neighborhoods of the same town that for historical, political, social and economic reasons might enjoy different degrees of access to the water networks and to water services. So here the human right to water is linked to general political claims, but also to the materiality of everyday life, to what we could call the everyday state, namely the presence and the influence of public authorities in the everyday life of its citizens, for instance through the water bills or through infrastructures which might not function that properly. So this is a second example of an approach and understanding to the human right to water, which emphasizes the political dimension and the political implication of this right, also in terms of equity. And now we can move to the third and final section of the submodule, where we will discuss and we will address how the private companies and private water operators have incorporated the right to water in their official strategies.